AI automation for real estate is starting to look like an action or spy movie, thanks to Anthropic, aka how Anthropic accidentally became the most talked about AI company in the world through a combination of principle and spectacular mishap. If you've been paying attention to AI workflow tools for property investors and real estate agents recently, you'll have noticed that the conversation has shifted. Not long ago, if you mentioned AI in a room full of SMEs, ChatGPT was the only name anyone said. OpenAI had the brand recognition, the marketing budget, and seemingly all the oxygen. Anthropic and their AI, Claude, were largely known only to the people who were genuinely deep into the space, the tech enthusiasts, the early adopters, the ones who'd actually done the reading. That has changed, quite dramatically, and not entirely for the reasons Anthropic might have chosen. The Pentagon standoff. Let's start at the beginning. Anthropic had an existing $200 million contract with the Pentagon, and Claude was already being used in real military operations. Then, in early 2026, contract renegotiations hit a wall. The Pentagon wanted Anthropic to allow unrestricted use of Claude for all lawful purposes. Anthropic said no. Specifically, Anthropic's CEO, Dario Amodei, insisted that Claude must not be used for mass surveillance of American citizens or to power fully autonomous weapons, things he described as bright red lines for the company. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth gave Amodei a Friday deadline: comply or risk losing the Pentagon contract and potentially being placed on what amounted to a governmental contract exclusion list. Anthropic didn't blink. The Pentagon ultimately labeled the company a supply chain risk, a designation typically reserved for foreign adversaries after negotiations over safety guardrails fell apart. President Trump then ordered every federal agency to immediately cease all use of Anthropic's technology. And in a Truth Social post that pulled absolutely no punches, Hay calling Anthropic's leadership left-wing nutjobs, describing the company as a radical left woke company trying to strong-arm the Department of War, and warning of major civil and criminal consequences if they didn't comply during the 6-month phase-out period. He signed off naturally with "Make America Great Again." Now, I want to be clear about something. This wasn't the government asking Claude to do something and Claude refusing. This was a contractual dispute about whether Anthropic, the company, would remove safety guardrails from its AI so the military could use it however they saw fit. Anthropic said the technology wasn't reliable enough for autonomous lethal decisions. The Pentagon said that was their problem to decide, not a contractor's. That's a genuinely difficult and important argument. But the optics of a tech company standing firm against that kind of pressure and going public about why earned them a lot of respect from people who care about AI being built responsibly. A federal judge later found that the government's actions against Anthropic were likely retaliatory and probably unlawful. And perhaps most entertainingly, former Trump advisor Steve Bannon publicly said he thought Anthropic had it right. When you've lost Steve Bannon, things have gone sideways. Meanwhile, OpenAI stepped in and reached a deal with the Pentagon on the terms Anthropic had refused. For a significant number of people in the AI community, that was the moment they moved their work and their subscriptions over to Claude. Not because OpenAI did anything illegal, but because they wanted to work with and support what they perceived to be the most ethical company, the company that had drawn a line and held it, the code leak. Right. So just as the dust from that particular drama was settling, Anthropic managed a spectacular piece of accidental self-sabotage. On the 31st of March 2026, a missing line in a configuration file shipped 512,000 lines of proprietary code, the entire source code of Claude Code, to the public in a routine software update. Anthropic were quick to clarify. No sensitive customer data or credentials were involved or exposed. This was a release packaging issue caused by human error, not a security breach. That's the official line, and I have no evidence to contradict it. But am I the only person who finds a company that just publicly humiliated the US government, accidentally having its most valuable proprietary code exposed to the world only days later? It was, in fact, the second time this had happened. An earlier version of Claude code had accidentally exposed its original code in a similar incident in February 2025. Twice in 12 months. Coincidence, stupidity, industrial espionage. You can decide what you make of that. What I will say is this: as a demonstration of how not to handle your AI-powered property investment workflows, accidentally publishing your proprietary source code to NPA is right up there. Implement AI processes in your business with more care than Anthropic apparently used that morning. And now Mythos, the model that spooked the banks. And then, just when you thought Anthropic had generated enough headlines to last a decade, their upcoming model leaked before they'd even announced it. Descriptions of the new model, called Claude Mythos, were inadvertently stored in a publicly accessible data cache and reviewed by Fortune. A draft blog post described it as by far the most powerful AI model we've ever developed. That alone would have been interesting, but what really set the cat among the pigeons was what Mythos turned out to be capable of. During testing, the model demonstrated an ability to find and exploit previously unknown zero-day vulnerabilities in every major operating system and every major web browser. Anthropic said the model had uncovered thousands of high-severity vulnerabilities, including flaws in major operating systems and web browsers, and initially limited access to approximately 40 companies, including Amazon, Apple, and JP Morgan Chase, so they could experiment with the model and address weaknesses in their systems. Anthropic named this initiative Project Glasswing, the idea being that the same capabilities that make Mythos dangerous in the wrong hands make it extraordinarily useful for finding and fixing vulnerabilities before the bad actors do. Smart framing. Whether it's enough to calm the financial regulators who are currently, to use the technical term, losing their minds about it, remains to be seen. But it certainly explains why the name Anthropic is on everybody's lips right now. So what does any of this mean for you? Here's the thing. If you're a property investor or a real estate agent who wants to use AI workflow tools to save money, improve efficiency, and increase profits, and you should be, because AI-powered property investment strategies are genuinely changing what's possible for SMEs right now, then none of the above soap opera actually changes anything about what Claude can do for your business today. Lead generation, market analysis, automated follow-up, due diligence, content creation, client communications. The intelligent automation for property investors that seemed like science fiction 18 months ago is now just a Tuesday. What the last few months have done is make Anthropic and Claude impossible to ignore. They stood up to pressure from the most powerful government on Earth. They accidentally became the most talked about AI company in the world through a combination of principle and spectacular mishap. And they built a model that has global regulators and major financial institutions scrambling to understand it before it's even released. As I keep telling anyone who will listen, if you're not already integrating AI automation for real estate into your business, you are falling behind. The tools are here, the efficiency gains are real, and the company building what many now believe are the most ethically considered AI tools for SMEs just had the most extraordinary few weeks in the industry's history. No publicity is bad publicity, they say. Anthropic is definitely testing that theory.